Welcome to the Formalize tutorial video about derived values. Derived values are useful for, well, when you want to do something with the information in the form, but you don't want your users to have to do it. It would be nice if the form did it for you. So often this is used for totaling things or doing other, doing anything in response to what users have put in to the form. So we can imagine, say, total number of adult animals that have been seen based on the information that users are putting in here, total number of males, total number of females, and so on. We could basically do totals in for four sets based on what's here. So we derive. That's why it's called derived values. The totals are derived from the other values that are already in the form. So we would do that if we just look at the list of elements in the wildlife activity form. Switch over to the admin side. There's a value derived from other elements. It's a kind of something that you can add to the form. And if we look at the value derived from the other elements, then click on that, and it's just like any other element that you might interact with. So let's call this a well, just to make it simple, let's say total animals. And then the options are formulas. Now there's also number formatting options, just like you see in text boxes. So if you know this is going to be, if this is going to produce a number based on, it's going to have so many decimal places, or you want to have a $sign in front of it, you can control that if it's going to produce a number in that way. Now the formula for deriving the elements, you do have to put in a bit of code here. So as in this example, you've got to have $value equals and then whatever your formula is. Now value, the dollar is just it's a indicator of a variable in PHP. It shows that this is not a fixed, this is not something that's fixed. It's something that's going to change based on what we're assigning to it. So value equals, and then we can just pick all the other things. So we can say add that to the formula, and then we can say plus add that, plus add that, plus add that. So there we go, and that's really all there is to it. For a simple formula, that's all you have to do. There's actually quite a bit more that you could do. You could put any PHP code you want in here. And if you end up doing multiple lines, you would put semicolons at the end of lines. Normal PHP syntax applies. But if you just want to do a simple sum like this, number of adding up all the numbers to get the total, then you don't even need to use semicolons or any other PHP stuff other than the variable itself, $value equals, and then your formula. So we can save those changes, and if we save this, it will cause the page to reload. Oh, it's giving me an error there because because of other pages loaded in between, and that I believe is a manifestation of the token issue. I loaded that form. If you review the preferences video, there's a long discussion about the security token, which there's a preference for it. And well, just a quick tip. You can sometimes see this error in Formalize. It often happens when you've got a form, it's loaded, but then you've done some other stuff, like I did all of these things over here, and then you go back to the form and it says, hey, wait a minute, you stopped interacting with this form, but now you're submitting it. What's going on? And that's a security precaution. If you turn off the security token, that problem will not affect you as much in the same way. Anyway, okay, so if we reload that page, there we are, and we look at that entry again, then we've got, total animals 4, 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4. And if there were 3 females, we can save that, and presto, it updates the total to 7. So it's an element that's embedded in the form like any other element. It's got a position in the form. It's right there at the bottom, and you can interact with it just like others. You can assign conditions to when it appears. You can control which groups see it and so on. But ultimately, its contents are going to be determined based on the formula. So that's the basics of it, and let's just change column to show that. Oh, whoops. Now, if you've done something like that, here's another tip. I accidentally, I think, held Shift when I clicked on that, so it has selected everything. You can just close that. You don't have to. You don't have to submit it or anything. And we're back to, we open that again and we get what we wanted. So we can just add total animals, and there we go. There's our total animals. So now these others don't have any animals listed, but that one obviously does. So some notes then about derived values and how they are being updated. Derived values get updated when a list loads. Derived values will be updated if the entry has no value for that column. If the entry has a value for that column, it's not going to try and update it. There's an optimization thing here where we don't want to just go running all of those formulas for every entry all the time. Depending on your situation and how many entries you have and how many formulas you have and how complex they are, that can actually be quite onerous, and there's a big performance hit for that. So we only update the derived values when they are empty. So if the list loads, any elements, any entries that are shown in the list that do not yet have a value computed for them, we'll try and update them. Only entries that are shown on the current screen, like these 7 here, is all the entries in this form. Those are the ones that we're going to try and update. If there was 100 entries in this form and we were only showing, say the first 10 here and the next 10 on the next page and the next 10 on the page after that, we only do the update to the derived values for the entries that are on that page. So we check, okay, these entries on the page, which ones have no derived value computed yet? Let's compute those ones and nothing else. So we're really minimizing the number of computations that we're trying to do on each page load. So if you actually want to update, if you're in a situation like we are here where we created a form and then we added some information to the form and then we added the derived value, you may have to actually load many pages of the form in order to update all of the derived values, because when you load the first page, the first 10 might be updated, but the next ones wouldn't. Now, any new data that gets entered, anytime data is saved, then data is updated. And you saw how when we were here, we changed that to a 3 and this became a 7. I can put that back to a 0, and that's going to become a 4. So any new information that's entered, anytime information is saved, then the derived values are updated at that time as well. No problem there. But for any existing entries, if you make changes to your formulas, then only when you load the list, only entries that did not have a value before will be updated, and otherwise you would have to save each individual entry. Now so for example, this if we suppose we remove number of adult males, let's just remove that from the formula briefly, save that. That's obviously going to change the numbers. But because of the way the updating logic works, like I described, if we just reload this page, oh, yeah, and it's not part of our default columns, so let's just add it back in. There, numbers didn't change. Well, like I said, it seems confusing at first when you see that behavior, but what's going on is since the value is computed for those entries, it's not updating when the list loads. It normally only updates when the data changes, when you save an entry. then the derived value will be updated. So if you are fiddling around with a formula and making changes and trying to debug stuff, this can be a problem. It can be very confusing. So one thing you can do to get around this is you can add something called force derived value update in the URL for your page. So if you just add that extra bit of information in the URL, that will tell Formalize, okay, even though you would normally not update existing values when the list loads because we don't want to do extra work, this time the user is telling us through the URL, please update everything all the time. And once again, it's not part of the default. Just add that in. And there we go. So now, okay, it's recognized that that value is changed. Is presumably it was only the adult. It was only the number of adult males that had a value there, and this is properly updated to 3. There were 2 adult males in that sample, and our formula is now ignoring them. And so yeah, if we're just depending on what our situation is, we might be might make all kinds of different changes to the formula, trying to perfect things. If you're doing a complex PHP formula with many lines, you might make changes and make some more changes and test it, make some more changes and test it. And if you're doing that, you really want to make sure that you have the force derived value update in the URL, because that will every time the page loads now, even if we say put in a search for night, as long as that URL parameter was added when the page loaded, now every time we load this page for any reason, it's going to update the total animals there. Bumped it back up to 4. And the other one should have come back to, if we clear that and load all the entries, yep, there it is, back at 5. So with this, it will update all the time, but that's not the default behavior because we're trying to minimize the amount of work that we're doing. So derived values can be very powerful. You can, you got full set of PHP tools at your disposal, and they really help in situations where you want the user to give you some information, but then you don't need them. You can figure out what you need to know based on what they've told you. You don't want to give them, say, a text box here to enter in the total animals. You're asking them to provide some more information. If they make an error, then there could be inconsistency in your data. This way, you know that everything's going to be totally consistent because your totals are based on what the users actually put in there, and you're not making them do more work than is necessary. So that's that. They're hopefully very useful to you, and in many different ways. We find all kinds of uses for them when we're deploying Formalize applications. And yeah, if you want help with any more advanced applications of them, please post in the support forums, and we'd be happy to hear what you're up to and provide some advice.